Okay, so let's had it upside down, didn't I? Here it is, break time at work again, and I got something I want to show you. So this is the worm bin, the vermiculture area, and this often happens. A couple of seedling tomatoes have come up because what happens, and there's some potato seedlings too, and the compost, if you remember, I told you the compost pile gets, I can get it up to about 180, 200 degrees if I really work at it. And that heat usually kills all of the weed seeds, except it won't kill tomato seeds. So one of the reasons we want it to get hot is to kill those seeds so that we don't have a bunch of weeds coming up in the garden. But I'm going to set this up here in a minute. So I'm going to show you what I do when I find these seedlings. And I've done this several times. As I pot these things up in some extra pots that I have. This is from Proven Winners, some flowers that we had ordered for campus, and I always save the pots and clean them up a little bit and then use them over again. But I'll put those in those pots and then transplant them out into the garden. And I've done it a couple times with the potatoes too. The potatoes, what happens to them, and I saved one from the other day. This is a potato peeling that didn't go through the compost. I just put it here in a worm bin, and the worms didn't mess with it too much. It sprouted, and I've actually had another video. I'll probably show you what I do with that. But I'll dig this one up and save it for a couple of days and find a good spot for it. Usually I grow them in containers, but I'll show you. I have a couple of different ways that I deal with potatoes, and in another video I'll show you how that works. It's pretty cool. But I'm going to dig these two tomatoes up and pot them. Okay, so I just potted up a whole one of those tomato plants, and was talking to the camera, and then I got it all done and I realized the camera wasn't on. So I'm going to do it with the other one and walk myself through it again so you can see what I'm talking about. This is the other seedling. My experience has been, and I think I mentioned it already, but my experience has been that these seedlings are almost always cherry tomatoes, or one of the varieties of cherry tomatoes. The last one I did was it's often called, when you go to the grocery store, you'll see it is called a grape tomato. And the grape tomatoes cluster, they're about a little bit bigger than a regular cherry tomato, but they cluster like grapes. And it was absolutely the most magnificent tomato I'd ever eaten, in that style. The hybrid tomatoes don't reseed very well. And I had some other video I'll talk about hybrids and what that all means. But the cherry tomatoes, they will volunteer very easily, and you'll often, as you get more involved in gardening, you'll actually find the cherry tomatoes that, if you've grown any in your garden, the seedlings that come up in the garden themselves are almost always cherry tomatoes. But here you can see the leaf at the top of the tomato has a trifold on this one, right? And then there's a leaf down below that's single. These leaves that are below here are what is known as cotyledons. Cotyledons are the baby leaves. So if you could imagine a seed of a dicot, which is what this is, as opposed to a monocot, and I'll talk about that some other time. But what you need to know is that in tomatoes, when the seedling sprouts, there are two little leaves that come up when the seed sprouts. And that's what these are, these two little ones down here. And that gives the seed enough energy to, by photosynthesizing, enough energy to push these other and produce these other leaves. And once it gets to this stage, then it's ready to transplant. And I find them growing here in the vermiculture, and because the soil that's in the worm casting is so mild, there's no hot fertilizers in it at all. It's all natural, and it's a mild. I can use it to start seeds, so it's real nice. What I do when I plant these, and you can do this with tomatoes. I've never been able to do it with other plants. Is bury that. I take these leaves off, pull these cotyledons off, and in this case there's just two. Sometimes on a bigger tomato there's a lot more at the top of the mature leaves. I'll bury the whole plant right up to the base of those, and then the roots will form along this entire stem. And by doing that, I increase the amount of root volume that the plant has and will develop. And the more roots and the healthier the roots of any plant, the more mature, the more healthy, or more, is that the right way to say that? The healthier the plant would be. So I'm gonna put I'll put some worm castings in here in this pot, and I'll bury that all the way. You're not being able to see it because of the way I've got the camera set, but I'll show it to you. I'll lift it up and so you can see it here in a minute. There. Okay. So the plant is potted all the way to the base of those leaves. Right? And then I'll go set this in the greenhouse under the mister, and it'll get watered for the next few days. And once it's settled down a little bit, I'll just set them out on the benches and let it get big enough so I can just transplant it into the garden. And hopefully those will be a nice variety, some sort of cherry tomato.